There's a strange expectation built into nonprofit leadership. The more committed you are to the mission, the less permission you're given to question whether you still want to lead it. Because the moment you do, people may assume you're tired or selfish or already halfway out the door. So you keep going. You answered the board's questions about fundraising, staffing, strategy, programs, budgets, all the things the organization needs from you. But almost nobody stops to ask what you need, and certainly not the question that may matter most. Do you still want this? Now, that question can feel dangerous, and I know it can, because even considering it may sound like an announcement, like you've already made a decision, like the board needs to prepare for your departure immediately. But that's not what it means. Thinking about whether you still want the role is not the same as resigning from it. And here's the thing, refusing to ask yourself that question may be far more dangerous for you, for your board, and for everything you've spent years building. Because by the time your answer becomes obvious through exhaustion and frustration, withdrawal, or a sudden resignation, the organization may have already lost some of its best options. So today, I'm going to show you why nonprofit leaders are rarely given a safe opportunity to consider this question, how avoiding it can put the organization at risk long before anyone announces a departure, and how you can begin answering this question honestly without creating panic or making your board think you're leaving. Let me tell you when I finally asked myself that question, because I did not plan to. City Connect Detroit was something nobody had built before. It was a demonstration model, a brand new idea, and our funders did something that almost never happens in the nonprofit world. They committed 5 years of funding upfront, five foundations, 5 years guaranteed. Now, when that happened, I said to myself, I made a little agreement with myself to, well, I'll give this 5 years. 5 years to build it, 5 years to prove the idea, and 5 years to see whether this thing could actually work. And we proved the model in less than 5. We built the partnerships, we created the structure, the work was making an impact. So nothing was wrong. And that is important because we tend to believe leaders only start questioning their future when something has gone bad. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes you are simply tired, but sometimes you are using a temporary problem to explain away a deeper truth. And for me, one morning, with no board meeting, no crisis, no dramatic event, I said something to my husband that I had never said before. I said, I love this, but I don't want this anymore. But in the nonprofit world, we rarely allow those truths to sit beside each other. We assume that if you still care, you should still say, still be in the seat. That's the trap. So I said, I love this, but I don't want this anymore. And my husband did not comfort me. He did not say, "Oh, you're just tired." He did not try to talk me out of it. He looked at me and said, "Fine, what are you going to do?" That question forced me to move beyond the feeling. It made me confront the responsibility attached to the answer. And even though everything still ran through me, the donor relationships, the partnerships, the decisions, the history, the trust, I was the founder. I was the face of the organization. And even if I wasn't the founder, or if you aren't the founder of your organization, you're the exec, so you're the face. So in my case, I knew when I woke up one day and simply decided I was done, my private realization would instantly become everybody else's emergency. Okay. The board's emergency, the staff's emergency, the funder's emergency, the organization's emergency. And that was the moment I began planning my own succession, not because the organization was failing, not because I was being pushed out, not because I had a departure date that was circled on the calendar. I started because I finally allowed myself to answer a question I had avoided for years. Do I still want this? The nonprofit sector has created a very particular picture of commitment. A committed leader sacrifices. She takes the call. She protects the staff. She reassures the board. She keeps the donors confident and the mission moving, even when she is carrying far more than anyone else realizes. After enough years, commitment starts getting confused with permanence, but thinking is not announcing. Questioning is not resigning. Preparing is not leaving. You may decide that you still want the role, but not under the same conditions. You may decide the organization needs to change. You may decide you need to change. Or you may decide that it is time to begin preparing for an eventual transition. Listen to me, folk. No one stays in any position forever. It may seem like that sometimes. But here's the thing, because so few boards have a normal succession process, almost any honest conversation about the future sounds final. Only about 1 in 4 nonprofit boards has a written executive succession plan. Because see, when the organization is struggling, people understand why a leader might reconsider the role. There is a visible reason. But what happens when the organization is doing well? The programs are working. The board still wants you. Donors still trust you. Staff members depend on you. What reason does the exec have. So eventually, the work ahead forces the question, because you are not only deciding whether you still want the job you have today, you are deciding whether you want the job this organization is becoming. Long tenured executives often look backward. I know I did it. We look at what we built, the money we raised, the partnerships we created, the innovative services we brought forth, the crisis we solved, the trust we earned. Now, these accomplishments may prove that you were exactly the right leader for the years behind you. They do not automatically prove that you want to lead the organization through the years ahead. This is the actual job you are deciding whether to keep. Now, capability asks, can I keep doing this? Mhm. Desire asks, do I want what continuing will require? And you need an honest answer to both. Now, that answer may still be yes, and that's cool, but it should be what I call a new yes, not a yes you gave 10 years ago and never examined again. And if the answer is not clear, be careful not to let exhaustion decide for you. Exhaustion can make everything look final. It's over. A difficult board chair, 2 senior staff vacancies, donor concerns, program demands that are escalating. You don't know what to do next, or you're not sure. A leader can be tired of the conditions without being finished with the role. But sometimes we use a crisis to avoid what we already know. We say, once we fill these positions, I'll feel like myself again. I hear that all the time from my clients, the leaders that I advise. Or once I do something about my board, whether it's expand it or shrink it, once the board changes, I'll want to stay. And you know what? And then the pressure, you feel comes down. But here's the sign, but the desire does not return. So ask yourself 3 questions. First, what exactly is exhausting me? Is it one person or one program or one funding problem, one responsibility I should no longer be carrying? Second, if the immediate pressure eased, would I still want this role? Imagine the vacancies are filled. The board is functioning, the budget is stable, and you return from a real break, a real vacation. Do you feel relief because you can finally lead again, or disappointment because you still have to return? And third, do I want this work and the life this organization requires from me now? Not the job you accepted years ago, this job with this board, this funding landscape. But I'm talking about this funding picture, this funding landscape. You may not have an immediate answer, and that's okay. I don't know is not failure, but it can't become a permanent hiding place. The goal is not to force a quick yes or no, The goal is to become honest enough to understand what you are actually deciding, what you're facing, because you do not want a temporary crisis to push you out of a role you still want. You don't want that. But you also do not want to spend another 3 years calling a permanent truth a temporary problem. Okay. And so this is where the difference comes in. And this is where the questions stop being only personal, and avoiding it does not help anything. In fact, it creates greater organizational risk. And if you need help in trying to figure out those questions to ask and how to approach the subject, there's a free resource, a board starter conversation kit. The link is below, or you can DM me for it. Because when a leader's answer has changed, the effects usually show up before the announcement is made. And so we want to make sure that our nonprofits continue to be strong, to be stable, and that we understand that a leadership transition is okay as long as we prepare for it, as long as we think about it, and as long as we, as seasoned nonprofit executive leaders, allow ourselves to ask the question, do I still want this? That's the question I want to leave you with. Do you still want this? If you're figuring out how to navigate that answer, check out this video next on the screen.